Welcome back to part 2 of my discussion with former KKK member Chris Buckley. Chris spent 3 years as an Imperial Nighthawk in the Georgia White Knights until his wife successfully arranged an intervention. And he has since become the co-creator of a de-radicalization program designed specifically with veterans in mind. Chris, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me about the intervention, because I imagine you didn't know that your wife was planning it, and then all of a sudden, someone's at your door trying to hug you? Like what does a, KKK intervention even look like?
Right, so we have to set the stage here, right? So, like, my wife is watching me fall further and further into this fucking group, and she's freaked out. Like, she's giving me the ultimatum. It's me and the kids or the clan. Like, you have to choose. And I'm leaving. I'm going to go stay at my sister's for a while until you can figure shit out. Because she was starting to become targeted. Because people wanted to get to me, so they would target her. So she just took a page out of my book, and out of spite and sheer desperation, one night, she's like, she Googles, she's like, how do I get my loved one out of a hate group?
Oh, wow.
And yeah, I mean, that's like the favorite part of like the story up to this point for everybody. So like, I have to like give you some background on my wife. She is the most amazing woman and just genuine, good-hearted. She's my angel, right? She tells everybody, she's like, Chris gave me my backbone, but in all actuality, she gave me mine. I couldn't live without her. She's my best friend. So I really started to think. So during this time, I'm like, I've got to get sober. I've got to get sober. I've got to get sober. I'm going to die. My kids are going to walk in and catch me dead. And I can't do that to them. So like, I start to struggle with sobriety. So in the meantime, Melissa has reached out to the only former in Google's algorithm that would pop up was Arno Michaelis, who is he was actually one of the founding members of a 90s neo-Nazi group called the Hammerskins. And he was the lead singer of a group called Centurion, which was a white power hate band. So she sends off an email. She's like reading his story, watching videos with him. And she's like, oh my God, this is Chris. Chris has got to meet this guy. So she sends an email, like, just in desperation, like, hey, please help me. I don't know what to do. What can I do? And he's like, where are you located? What airport do I need to fly into? I'll come down and I'll meet with him.
Oh, wow.
So I have no knowledge of this, right? So I'm outside in the yard, and I was playing catch with my son. Like, I was trying to teach him to catch. He's 4, right? So we're playing catch with a baseball, and this car, my wife is like, hey, I got to go to the store, CJ's. He needs more Lunchables, and, your daughter needs diapers. Because my daughter was like not even a year old. She was like 8 months old. I think nothing of it. She's coming and going all the time. I'm out there trying to teach my son to play catch, and this big black SUV pulls in, and my first instinct is like, fuck, the feds are here, right? And I got guns, and go to prison, and out unfolds this huge man. Like, Arno's like 6 something. I'm 5'8" on a good day. And like, he unfolds, he's got this super huge, deep voice. And he's like, hey, Chris, my name's Arno, and your family's really worried about you. And I was like, who in the fuck are you? Right? Like, hold the fucking phone, buddy. Like, this is my driveway, right? Georgia has a stand your ground. Oh, hold on, I got something. I'm gonna walk
Right,
it out.
right.
I'll be right back, and we can let my family be worried about your well-being, right? So I go in the house and I walk out, and I've got a pistol, and like, he just didn't budge. He was like, we're worried about your sobriety. We're worried about your sobriety. My wife pulls in, and like, the initial reaction when you're caught doing something that you don't want to be doing and that you shouldn't be doing, you respond with like anger, like, how dare you catch me being a drug addict? Right? Like, nobody knows I do drugs. Meanwhile, I've got a TV tore apart in my driveway at fucking 3 a.m. I'm gonna fix it though. But so like I when Arno said those words, like, we're worried about your sobriety and your health, I was too. And I remember like the will to fight left me. And I broke. For the first time in my life, I broke. And like I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about it, because up until that point, I always had to be the strong one. I always had to carry everybody else's shit. And I never really had time to carry my own. And the drugs, the downers helped me numb everything that I didn't want to feel, because I felt too fucking much and I didn't want to feel so much. So heroin and pain pills, they helped me to make that numb to where I didn't feel anything. And when you feel too much, not feeling anything is pretty fucking okay. And then there was times when I would be so fucking numb and I wanted to feel something, that I would use the uppers. I would use the meth. I would use the stimulants. And I couldn't do it anymore, man. Like my heart would be fluttering, like, just pounded off. And I just wanted to fucking be normal. And I remember he was like, I used to be an alcoholic. I spent years as an alcoholic. And we started to form this relationship. Now I'm starting to struggle with addiction and sobriety. I remember I did really good, man. I was doing really fucking good. I was like 3 months sober and I fucking relapsed. And I was like, okay, I didn't call my wife. I didn't tell Melissa. I called Arno. I was like, what the fuck do I do, man? I fucked up again. I'm a piece of shit. I'm not worthy to be a part of my family's life. Like, I just want to fucking die. Like, and I started to realize that my using was my attempt at taking a coward's way out. I wanted to overdose. I wanted to fall asleep and never wake up and rid my family of the burden that I felt that they were imposed with, when really I was the burden to myself. So I catch a drug charge, right? Obviously, that's just inevitable. That has to happen to be a part of a good story. And so I didn't call my wife. Obviously, I call Arno, and Arno's like, because my wife told me, she said, if you catch a drug charge, I'm done. I will not be here when you get home. And I just assumed that to be fact. So I called Arno and I was like, I need help. He was like, brother, you're in the best place you can be. I'm not mad at you. I don't hate you. And we're going to get through this. But you have to do what you need to do now. And I need to see you make the attempt for sobriety. I can't fight for your sobriety for you. You have to do that. You can't expect your wife and kids to fight for your fucking sobriety. You have to be the one to go out there and claw for it. Claw for it tooth and nail, the way you clawed for the next hit of dope when you ran out. And like, I had to sit with that. So I sat in jail for months and months and months, like over a year, waiting to go to court. Waiting to go to court. But that was on my request. I told the judge, I said, Your Honor, when I went for my bond hearing, he was like, $500 bond and we'll schedule a court date. And I was like, Your Honor, I need help. If I leave this courtroom today and I leave this jail, I'm going to go use. And I don't want to use anymore. And he said, all right, I got you, young man. I'm remanding you to custody until the opening of a treatment program.
Wow.
Fucked myself on that one, because I sat in jail for over a year waiting on the Daily Report Center, the Daily Report Drug Treatment Center to open up. And it was what saved my life. So I start to work on my sobriety, and I've built a really amazing relationship with Arno at this point.
And so give us a time, like how much time has passed? Is this like a year and a half?
So this is from like 2000 and like, I'm still involved in the movement at this point.
Okay.
Right. But I'm working on sobriety. So this is like early 2015. Right. So I'm starting to get sober, and I'm starting to realize that the only reason that I'm involved with the movement was to fund my use of drugs, which is pretty fucking lame, right? Like, how fucking, like, that's just fucking stupid. That makes no sense, but it does to an addict, right?
So you had to get a clear head to really see the picture. Plus you were probably like if you're physically in jail for a year, and then Arno came into your life a couple months before that, you are replacing the mentorship and the belonging
So,
with this new relationship. Plus, you're creating physical distance from the clan and their activities, right?
exactly. So like there's like all these theories about like how somebody you would get somebody out of a cult back in the day. Like you just went and fucking kidnapped them from the cult and locked them in the fucking bathroom for 2 weeks until they were ready to like not play with the Moonies anymore, right? Like
Right. Right.
like
Yeah.
there's a guy out there that fucking like he used to be a Moonie and like that's his whole thing. Like fucking like we gotta physically make you not be a part of the Moonies anymore. But like no, that's not it. There's a very psychological thing happening. And like so like I'll pick back up where I was at. So like I'm in jail. Um a year goes by, pretty much. And over the course of that year, I'm making friends in jail, obviously. Like, you're around people,
Yeah.
you need social interaction. And, like, I'm clean this whole time. And, like, I started exercising with a couple of black guys that I met in there. And they helped me to, like, get healthy and put my weight back on. And they didn't expect nothing in return. And, like, we became really good friends. Um, I started to try to mentor the other drug addicts that were coming in to help them like just plant the seeds for when they did get out and got released. Like, so I started my mentorship like while I was in jail. Like I started mentoring addicts. Um, Arno, comes and gets me and visits the same day I get released from jail and get accepted into the treatment program. Uh, and like we have this really long conversation, and he's like, "How do you feel?" And I was like, "Dude, I feel amazing." And like I actually said to him, and it was funny you brought that up. Like I had to say I have a sober mind because I used the expression a lot. Without a sober mind, I couldn't have a sober heart, right? And so he starts to inch into the ideology with me. This is like in the beginning, like right at the end of 2015, like right before Christmas. I remember because he come down and he brought the kids Christmas presents and we gave him Christmas presents that we made because like I was still really struggling. Because I got out of the program. So the program lasted from 7 in the morning till 4 in the evening. Sometimes you would get out at 2 if you were early. You drug test every other day. You're going through classes. You're going through rehab. Well, I still had a family to take care of. I still had a family to support. So from 5 till 5 the next morning, I worked. I would take a 1 hour nap when I got out of treatment, and then I would sleep for 2 hours before I went back to treatment in the parking lot in my car.
Wow.
I ran on 3 hours of sleep for over a year. And I can't tell you where I found the strength to do that. I can't. Like, could I do it today? No. I shot my wad on that. Like, I don't have it in me to be that fucking headstrong anymore to make it through that program and to stay sober and also provide for my family. My wife was going through a lot of illnesses. Like she was really suffering with health problems and she couldn't work. And I wouldn't ask her. I mean, so I started to see that she was eligible for assistance. She got food stamps. I worked, 11 to 12 hours a night, and I would take every overtime shift I could. And I kept the bills paid. And this is the time when I was living in a rat hole. The ceiling was falling in. I could literally see my neighbors upstairs walk past the hole in the ceiling.
Oh my gosh.
It could cast a shadow on the wall. The rats were as big as dogs. I mean, like the roach infestation, and like my kids lived there. And there's a movie coming out my documentary Refuge. You'll see these apartments that I lived in, and but yeah, so I started to confide in Arno about a lot of things because of this natural organic relationship. And I told him about my molestation, and he had some insight. He was like, "Chris, I think the reason that you're so against the LGBTQ community is because of who hurt you." And I was like, it's kind of abrasive. I was like, "You don't fucking know anything, man. Like that's not why I hate him. That's not why I hate him." And like, I realized that that's exactly why the fuck I hated him. Mm. I hated every single member of that community because I felt like they all had a part in my molestation. They were the ones that hurt me. And I felt like if given the chance, they would hurt more children. And I realized that that person breached the trust of the relationship, not me. I wasn't responsible for that. That's his fault. And I started to meet and interact with people of that community. And I found some of the best friends that I would ever have in my life in that community. My children's godmothers are a same-sex couple. I love them. They're my sisters. They mean as much to me as my own beating heart does. And I would go to war behind them women, right? But like, that prompted me to think more, like, what else am I fucking wrong about? Like, what else am I just suffering with that's just a figment of my creation, right? Because a soldier without a war will create his war because it's all he knows. So I created this war for myself to fight in, to have a purpose, to be a part of something bigger than me. And I allowed Arno to introduce me to a colleague of mine, Mubin Sheikh. He's Canadian. And like, he was the brunt of my anger when I had this meeting with him, man. And I wanted to know what the fuck, like, it was the first Muslim I've spoken to.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And like, I unleashed so much on Mubin, man. And he responded with compassion.
Wow.
And like that, if I really had to point out the one thing that got me out of the movement, it was people that I hated or claimed to hate giving me compassion instead of feeding my anger and my hatred by saying, punch Nazis in the face, because that fucking works, right? All it does is make the Nazi want to punch you back. And it just creates this cycle of violence, right?
Yeah.
So like, I start to challenge. I meet Mubin. We word vomit. It's really emotional. He explains the Quran, certain things that I believe that the Quran stated, that as a Muslim, a practicing Muslim who's borderline scholar when it comes to the Muslim faith, he's like, that's not what Islam's about at all, man. Like, Islam is about peace and love and compassion, and I should hate you because you hate me? Is that what you're saying? And I'm like, well, it makes sense to me. And he's like, but I don't. I love you, and I want to see you do well. So that really fucked me up, man. Like I'm fucked at that point. Like, I don't know where I'm coming or going. I don't know what I believe in or who I am, and I'm right back where I was when I got out of the Army. What do I stand for? And now, like, we live in this society where, like, everybody's a white supremacist. Everybody's an extremist, right? I mean, so I got involved with Arno, and I was like, I want to do what you do, man. I want to help me in the future. I want to be the intervention. I want to give back. I want to give that mother back her son. I want to give that husband his wife back. And sorry.
It's okay.
So Arno introduced me to Miriam Churchill, who is the executive director of Parents for Peace. And I remember he was like, dude, they're a really small organization. There's no money there, but there's a chance for you to give back. And I was like, fuck, man, make the phone call. So Miriam calls me, and she's like, Arno's been keeping me updated with your story, and I'd just like to talk to you. So Miriam became like my therapist, like my personal therapist for like the first year that I was involved with Parents for Peace. It was strictly, I'd volunteer. I would set in and listen to calls that involved white nationalists or white supremacists. I would provide my feedback. I would help them to understand the ideology, right? And how it manifests. That took off. So after the first year, Miriam was like, I want to bring you on as an official member of Parents for Peace. And I was like, I was amazed. I was grateful. I'm still grateful to this day, and it's been years, that I got the opportunity to give back. So now I am a full-time staff member, which means this is how I make my living, is by working for Parents for Peace. And I remember when I first got on the payroll, I was like, I've got this idea. She's like, what is it? I was like, I wonder if I was just as addicted to hate and extremism as I was to meth and heroin. And she's like, I mean, maybe. And because nobody could tell me no, or that's impossible because of this, it gave me this burden of now, like, just as in anything with science, when you have a hypothesis and you have an idea and nobody can disprove it, you have the obligation to try to prove it or disprove it. So I completely erased like the titles of the list of red flags to substance abuse addiction, red flags to people involved in using, and red flags to people involved in extremism and radicalization and grooming. And I took it to one of the previous substance abuse counselors that I had, and I was like, what are these two lists? She was like, they're substance abuse lists, warning flag.
Oh,
And I'm
interesting.
like, no, they're not. Like, this one is the warning list for white supremacy and violent extremism and Islamism and environmentalism and all the other isms, right? And this is the list for drug abuse and substance abuse. She's like, that's really interesting. I was like, what do you make of that? She goes, that's really interesting. And I was like, so you don't fucking know either. Great. So I come home and I'm like, I'm still really involved in my recovery at this point, right? Like now it's just no big deal. Like I'm not going to sit back and be like, I'm a recovering addict. Oh, fuck that, man. Like you don't hear people that, you know, that beat cancer be like, I'm a recovering cancer survivor. No, fuck that. I beat that shit and I claim it because I feel like if I continue to be like, well, I'm in recovery, then I allow that cognitive opening or subliminal opening for using again in the future. I've beat my addiction, right? But I was reading a book at the time by Russell Brand, right? I love that man. He is amazing. And his insight to addiction and recovery is unparalleled. He should be a leading fucking contributor, like the expert on addiction in the US. So I'm reading it and he's like, I remember he made a statement. He was like, the 12 steps can be any fucking thing you want them to be. Basic reason to the 12 steps are I'm fucked up and I don't want to be fucked up anymore. Why am I fucked up? What can I do to not be fucked up? And that language was so powerful to me because all I had ever experienced was the 12 traditions, the 12 rules, the 12 steps. And it's like, fuck that. Throw that out the window. I'm going to create a program to help people deal with extremism and ideology the same way we deal with fucking substance abuse. It's a moral cognitive approach, right? So I did that, and that was influenced by Russell Brand.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I mean, like now we have the TRP. It's called the Trauma and Recovery Program. We have a fully functional program designed specifically for the American warfighter, soldiers and sailors of all branches. We have an obligation as a society when we bring soldiers home to integrate them effectively and give them the tools that they need to become the men and women that they were before they left.
Yeah.
And better, right? So in the process of that, we ended up with a law enforcement one to help the law enforcement that deal with trauma in the job.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's actually been piloted with Aurora PD in Colorado. The liaison to that was Officer Sammy Wicks at the time, and they loved it. And we're still working on getting that piloted into other police departments across the nation to get the feedback on that. But I'm going to say it. Police officers are very sensitive, and to even think about the idea of bringing a program in to help them deal with ideology that might arise from their job, right? So it's really easy for a white cop that works in an entire black community to form opinions based on his environment that aren't true, right? So when we start to put this in front of them and people realize that it's their traumas that justify their worldview, we're able to fix that. And we've got some important leads that we're working on to get that in front of some other officers.
That is incredible. Your story is so impactful. And I think that people watching or listening to this will really appreciate your straightforward approach. And I love that you are out there in the community doing this. So just a couple of quick questions before we sign off that people might be curious and I don't want to leave unanswered. In some of these step-by-step programs, there's one of the steps is reconciliation. And I know from other interviews that you've done that you and some of your KKK Klansmen did some pretty gnarly things. And so what have you done to reconcile those acts to those individuals and those families?
Oh man. I think that the work that I'm doing is directly related to my attempt at reconciliation. I want to see white supremacist groups, Islamist groups, I want to see all these extremist groups not exist. The goal is for me to not have a place in this job anymore because this job doesn't exist. So like I'm at war with the ideology, and I'm out there every day trying to, pull people out of hate. And, I make amends anywhere I can. And I apologize to anything that I've ever done that has directly or indirectly impacted somebody. And I can give them this promise that I'll spend the rest of my life making amends for that. This isn't something that I do because I enjoy, although that is a part of it. I do enjoy defeating extremist organizations and taking their members and giving them back to their families. But it's also something that I've inherited an obligation to do. It's part of making amends and giving back.
I can see maybe other individuals coming out of mental patterns of extremism and just kind of going on with their day to day, their more peaceful, loving existence, but maybe not purposefully placing themselves in diverse communities. Like they're not going to go to the gay bar with a friend, right? But they're like, but I'm not part of KKK anymore,
missing
right?
out, dude. That's amazing.
So
I love going to the gay bar.
But I just kind of see like you have such a big personality. Maybe somebody who is, listening to you right now and yeah, one out of the KKK, or maybe they don't consider themselves racist anymore, but they're like, gosh, that Chris guy, I feel like he's gone overboard. Have you ever received that comment that, geez, Chris, okay, you're not in the KKK anymore. That's great. Congrats. But you're going a little overboard.
No, dude, because you know what I say to that? I mean, like, fuck you. I'm doing what makes me happy, right? I'm going overboard. I'm not, dude. Like, I'm experiencing my best life, and my best life is very diverse, and there's beauty in everything. And I've spent so much of my life being sheltered away and just only experiencing negativity that, like, this is my pursuit of happiness. And, I mean, who's to judge me for what makes me happy? And with that, I would say you should look at yourself and find out what could make you as happy as me. We should go to the gay bar sometime. Come on, out loud.
Last question. I looked up where you live, and it seems like it's a mostly white town. Am I right?
So
like on paper, it said like 93%. And the reason that I just want to make sure that's correct because
but out of it, there's only like 1,500 people that live in Chickamauga.
I noticed.
Right? Super small.
Yeah.
My area is there is a very high, if you look at my regional area, like North Georgia, super high condensation of Guatemalan and Mexican. So like overall, like Hispanic is very high. And then the farther like towards the middle you get, like towards like Marietta and Atlanta, there's a very high concentration of the Black population. So like I'm in that medium buffer where like it's all old people where I live. I'm super lucky. It's like a very quiet area. And I did that for a reason.
Well, the reason that I'm asking this, the reason that it's relevant is how, you said you were kind of starting to get your 4-year-old at that time into the Klan. And I think you said in another interview, your kids even use the N-word. Undoing that can be really hard, especially, like it's the subtle things, right? So how do you help your children maintain a good perspective when you live in an all-white Southern town?
Oh man, look, so this is an easy question. I see where you're going with this. I would just let you ask my kids to tell you about their Uncle Kelvon. All right. Like, I mean, there's it's like, it doesn't matter where I live. It's the experience that I put them in. Like my kids, we go anywhere we want to, man. Like just because I live in a white area, like I can't control that. Right. I
Right.
can't control who lives around me. This was where I could afford. Right. Because even though I work for Parents for Peace, I have very low income. Um, when I say I volunteer and barely make my needs, like that's that. Um, but like I
So what you're
have,
saying is you purposefully bring people into your life and you go to other people, you go outside your area, you purposely seek out these
I don't
opportunities to mingle with other people who are different than you. Is that what you're saying?
know. What I'm saying is that I don't purposely do anything because when I purposely go out to find like the token black guy, like, oh, that's exactly what white supremacists do is they have like, I'm not white supremacist. I got 3 black friends, right? No, I don't do that. But like I don't not do anything, right? Like I'm not afraid to drive through Atlanta at 12 o'clock at night. It's happened with my windows down. Like I don't care. Like I'm not scared of people based on their race, color, creed, and my kids aren't either. And like the undoing of the things, my son had just started to get involved, and it was a lot easier. My son is like he just wants to be like his dad. Like I'm his superhero, and like he's got a piss poor judgment call just like I did. Like to look up to somebody like me is fucking dangerous, man. But like he emulates me. Like the only reason he even wanted to be involved with any of that shit when he was 4 is because dad was there, and he repeats things he hears, corrective exposure, and leading by example, man. Like I don't seek out anybody based on uh their sexual preference or their race or religion. That would be kind of fucking bigoted of me to be like, oh, I gotta have some Hispanic friends now. Let's go to El Puebleritos and like make friends with the waiter. Like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how we do things. You meet people, you bond with them, and you just fucking allow people access to your life, and you allow yourself to access theirs, and you don't do it with any kind of intentions. It just happens.
Well, I so appreciate you coming on the show. This was amazing. Can you tell people as we wrap up where they can get in touch with Parents for Peace and if they know someone who is struggling with extremism, how they can get help?
Yeah, so we have a website, and that's www.parents, the number 4, peace.org. And we also have a national helpline. It's the only non-governmental funded helpline in the United States and Canada. And that is 1-844-49-PEACE.
Awesome.
And yeah, so and we do provide support to family members who just don't understand how to approach and deal with their extremist relative. We help the extremists themselves. And sometimes I would put this out there. Please don't call us just because your son or daughter is a Republican and you're a Democrat, and vice versa. I have had I have had kids call the helpline and be like,
Oh.
"My dad's an extremist," and I'm like, "Oh wow, what's going on?" We do the intake, and they're like, "Yeah, he's a Trump supporter," and I'm like, "That's not an extremist, man. That's a Republican." Like, there's a difference, and that's what I say. We've overused the word so damn much, man.
Yeah.
That like, if I put fucking pineapple on a pizza, I'm an extremist, bro. Like, we gotta get away from the wokeism.
Well, thank you, Chris, for sharing your story and thank you for what you're doing. And I hope that people connect with the organization. So that's a wrap. Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, you're still here. That's awesome. I hope to see you next week too. I talk with the most interesting people that you've probably never heard of. Most of them are paradoxical and bring an opportunity for you to grow as a person. So if you like bright, meaningful entertainment, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications.